Hello, welcome back to my channel. I've had a bit of time off, lots of going on, very busy social life, very busy work life and home life, and just lots of quite depressing things going on in my life, but trying to get back out of a reading slump and back into booktube a little bit more. So I'm gonna do a tag for you today to get back into the swing of things. And this is the Rootin Tootin June on the Range tag, created by Steve Donoghue, and it is in celebration of June on the Range, which is a reading event that was created by Michael K. Vaughan, the one and only Michael K. Vaughan, last year in order to get people to read more westerns, kind of just have a bit more of a celebration of the great western novel, which has often been much maligned, especially to newer audiences. Anyway, I'm going to start with the questions. Number one, A Ways Out West. Have you ever been to the American West? I have, in the modern definition of the American West, I've been to most of the states. So it'd be California, Oregon, Washington, Colorado, Arizona, Idaho, Wyoming, Montana, New Mexico. Most of that area. I went when I was 4. We went to did a big road trip. We started in Denver and we kind of just went. I guess we went down and around and back to Denver, and so we're pretty much everything from Colorado across up and down. Just I think the only thing we missed out was Texas. So we actually visited a lot of the classic American West. So we went to Monument Valley, went to Yosemite. We saw I guess is it the Pueblos in New Mexico, the old cave dwellings. They're actually fantastic. Obviously we went to San Francisco and Disneyland, Universal Studios, all that kind of thing. Right up to we went right up to Mount St. Helena in Washington, not long after it had erupted. So you could go around and see all the damage there. It was pretty incredible. Saw the lots of geezers around in I think it's probably Wyoming. Went to Yellowstone, and I think we were there in '88, and I think we were there at the time of the massive fire. I think we caught the start of that massive fire before everyone had to evacuate, and so yeah, lots of interesting. And since I've become an adult, I've been to San Francisco twice. Once for my honeymoon in 2014, and another time in 2019 for my friend's wedding. We have some friends down in San Francisco. When we went there for our honeymoon, we're actually seeing the same friends that got married in 2019. We went camping in Big Sur, which was incredible. We found this site because we were initially going to camp at Yellowstone, but it actually was it Yellowstone? Yeah, I think it was Yellowstone. See the Yellowstone and Yosemite. I was getting too mixed up, but I think it was Yellowstone. We were going to camp, and it was actually the wildfires, so our camping got cancelled. And so we just went to Big Sur, and we found this elevated part. We just managed to get up there, and you had this fantastic view of the valley below. It was incredible. So that was a pretty amazing trip. And I've also been to the Canadian West. I've been to Vancouver and around. I'd love to go up to the Yukon, which is famous for the gold rush, the Canadian gold rush. Yeah, I done surprisingly a lot of America, but I'd still like to do more as an adult. But I would also like America to be slightly nicer and stable politically before I do a lot of traveling there too. I'm kind of right now. I've been on a bit of a ban for American travel. I'm really been. I've even when I went in 2019, I was a bit reluctantly. Um, it was just because our good friends were getting married. I do live about 30 kilometers from the border of America, so it is quite the choice for me not to go. But yeah, that's more a personal choice. But I would certainly like to do more. I'd certainly like to go back to Colorado. Number two, Dry Gulch. What's the smallest town you've ever visited? And how small is your town right now? So, I actually grew up in a hamlet, and it wasn't very big. I looked it up recently, and it's late. The last census that I could find, that quickly looked up, was 2011, and that was 232 people lived there. And I think when I lived there, parents said it was about 11 houses. So yeah, you're not really very many people. Um, uh, and for visiting, I don't really know how. Um, uh, I've been to quite some small places. I can't really remember too many. I go to Westport all the time, which is just up the road, which is only about 600 people, so that's pretty small too. So you could say that was probably maybe the smallest place I've visited, but I'm pretty sure I've visited somewhere that's under 100 people. And as of my town right now, it's pretty small. It is about 10 10,000-ish people. Maybe you could maybe say 11 at a push. Um, which sounds a little bigger than it is because here in Canada, or especially in Ontario, we have what are called townships, which are basically um, a political kind of organization, and it usually consists of a lot of towns and villages and hamlets that are just too small to kind of exist on their own as a government. So they band together to form a bigger township. So even though it's 10,000, and it's the biggest in the county, and I think we're also the biggest town between Ottawa and Kingston. Um, Regardless of that, uh, we are spread over 729 kilometers square, or 281 square miles, which means there's only about 14 people per kilometer square, or 36 per square mile. So we're pretty sparsely populated. So even though we have about 10,000 people, you don't really bump into them all, and there isn't a major population center like a downtown or things. It's just all these little random little tiny high streets and towns which maybe have like one or two shops. So you don't tend to run into too many people. Number three, where the buffalo roam. Have you ever seen American bison in person? Or what's the largest hoofed animal you've seen? Or do you have evidence that you live near coyotes? I'm going to answer all three. So I have seen the buffalo roam. I saw them on that said trip when I was 4 years old in America. Um, Probably one of the parks. Is it Yellowstone or Yosemite where they have them? One of the ones they actually have them. I remember seeing some on a roadside somewhere though as well. So I want to say it was probably somewhere like Wyoming or Montana, one of those where um, they still have some bison. Um, and having said that, I think though the largest hoofed animal I have seen is a moose, and they're huge. We actually had one down the high street in Perth where I work. It's just a little unusual for them to be that far south, but they're not. You don't have to go too far up north to get the moose warning signs. Kind of just east of Ottawa. There's lots of moose crossing, moose warning signs. That's probably the biggest hoofed animal I've seen. They're absolutely humongous, and they are just all muscle. You don't, nothing really. You can't really appreciate. Nothing really gets you ready for seeing a moose in real life. Um, they are incredible creatures. And do you have evidence that you live near coyotes? I do. Not only have I seen coyotes in my backyard, because I have 5 acres on backs out onto some farmland, so I've seen them. I also in the summertime really hear them. They make quite the cacophony of sound. Every so often, usually once a month, they have a big raucous party. Kind of sounds like teenagers sometimes. As my wife described them, which I think is quite apt. Number 4, old Doc Frye. What's your history with westerns? Novels, TVs, movies. So when I was a child, I was obsessed with horses, um, and I loved western movies, and I particularly loved the Lone Ranger TV series, and I still do. Partly with nostalgia, but also just it's just quite the incredible show. The Silvers, the horse, is just an incredible animal, and very very beautiful, even in black and white. I appreciate um, the iconic and groundbreaking uh, acting of Jace Silverheels, who played Tonto. Um, yeah, and obviously Clayton, was it Clayton Moore who played the Lone Ranger? Very wooden kind of actor, but immensely fun. Had one of the greatest voices in American TV. Just that part of it was incredible. But yeah, the whole show was incredibly cheesy and funny and just super entertaining as a child. And then I love the Western movies. They always usually Saturdays and Sundays they'd have a matinee movie on the TV, and it was either a Western or a film noir. So I kind of got obsessed with both of them, um, even though uh, they're kind of considered U or PG, um, and you can show them like at the morning or midday and British TV in the 90s. They do deal with some pretty dark themes. They're just not explicit violence or anything, but both genres do really have some quite dark themes and deal with the darker side of humanity. So I was definitely intrigued, and it did feel like a slightly risque to be watching them, even though I was allowed to. Western novels, though, I didn't really start reading them until I was an adult. I kind of just really avoided them as a child. Definitely more when I was getting into genre reading as an adult, definitely, and more so into my mid 20s. I haven't really because of that, I haven't really read that many westerns. Number 5, Diamond Lil at the Rialto saloon. What's your relationship with alcohol? Have you ever had a friendship with a bartender? Um, so my relationship with alcohol during my 20s, my late teens until my 20s, you could probably say I was pretty close to being a functioning alcoholic. I didn't necessarily drink every day, but I did drink a lot of days, and most Fridays I would most Fridays and Saturdays I would get pretty drunk. I would go out and get pretty drunk, or I would stay at home and get pretty drunk. Um, and there was definitely a time at work where I basically kind of was just turning up to work every Saturday drunk, and my boss at one point had to actually intervene. It was pretty bad at one point, and I have definitely um, I've definitely drunken my sorrows away with a whole bottle of rum or whiskey or whatever. It's probably not too proud of that, but I would say yes. I was living in Scotland. growing up in the UK and generally, it's just alcohol is very much readily available, was reasonably cheap and socially acceptable to get drunk. So and sometimes even seen as uh, what you do, generally kind of like not just socially acceptable, but kind of promoted and yes, I celebrated. So yeah, I definitely did drink a lot. And now I actually live in a town that was kind of founded upon the Temperance Society. So even though we have the beer store, there's a beer store in Westport, and there's an LCBO there's one in Elgin, that's 5 kilometers one way, and there's one in Delta, which is 5 kilometers another way, and one in Portland, which is 5 kilometers another way. Um, they close kind of early, so it's a little bit difficult to get to for me, and I can get to the weekends and stuff. And then the nearest bar, I think, is about 30-40 kilometers away. Um, if you don't want to learn, if you don't want to be part of a Lions Club or the Legion, which kind of I'm not really into. Yes, that's kind of where I'm at. So it's so just making alcohol hard to get to is pretty much made me sober. I still have the odd drink and here and there, and I don't. Whenever we go out, I tend to be driving as well, so I'm not someone who will drink and drive. Never, even in my most drinking days, I would never have considered drinking and driving. So yeah, these days I'm pretty sensible, and it really is just the difficulty of access to alcohol really kind of made me kind of become sober, which is probably a good thing. And yes, I have had many a friendship with bartenders. I actually met when I met my spouse. They were bartending. um, Lots of my friends have been bartenders. I was a bartender when I was 18. Um, yeah, there's definitely a skill and an art to being a good bartender. Um, it's definitely a lot harder than you might expect, and you definitely have to have good chat, and you have to be able to not put up with a lot of shit. You have to really just be able to handle drunk people a lot and know how to handle them and what you can get away with, and not to take any shit off them, basically. Okay, number 6, the City Slicker Backies. What do you consider the best Western you've ever read? So again, I haven't really read that many. I think a lot of people um, have been giving Lonesome Dove at Lyra Marty for this answer, and I still haven't read it. I don't know why, even though I've had it physical copy for about 5 years, I still haven't actually read the book. I would say probably True Grit by Charles Portis is the best one I've read. I've read a lot of good crappy westerns, and I think something like Shane by Jack Schaefer is probably a little bit underrated, but I wouldn't say it was great. Number 7, The Man with the Badge. Have you ever been in charge of other people? What's the most authority you've ever handled? Would you be good at it? So currently I have authority over people. I am a lead hand at a plumbing supply company. It's a warehouse. So I am basically responsible for giving people some directions. I report directly to the warehouse supervisor. So he's kind of our jobs overlap a hell of a lot, but basically he's supposed to kind of direct me, and then I direct everyone else. I currently have about like 8 people under me. Um, I think I'm quite good. I'm not I'm not someone who's overbearing. I try to not be. I don't demand that people um, do as I say when as I say. I'm more of a this is what needs to be done. Let's go about it. If something specifically comes up, I'm gonna ask someone, can you please do this? But I generally like to explain. what's going on, what needs to be done, why we need to be doing it, and why we need to be doing it in a certain way, or whatever. Um, that's usually my style, and to be honest, my role is a bit more of a motivator and kind of just more to bring in an American term, quarterbacking a situation, and my main focus is on um, order picking and loading of the trucks, and I have quite a lot of experience doing those firsthand myself, so I can just um, give my pass on my experience basically to other people. And yeah, like I said, I think I'm good at it. I wouldn't want to have too much authority. Um, I do quite balk at the top down, um, the usual top down kind of organization levels of businesses, especially larger businesses. Mine's a bit more of a small to medium. It's not a small business, but it's a bit more of a medium, but it's not quite corporate. Like I worked for the Royal Mail for 10 years, which was very corporate. And I kind of tend to balk at the big top-down authority, and I'm quite an authoritarian, so even just this little bit of authority kind of rubs me the wrong way a little bit. But I do like to be part of a team, and I think a good strong team leader is definitely important sometimes. The Tombstone Kid. Have you ever fired a gun, been a gun aficionado, been shot? So I have fired a gun quite a few times. When I was smaller, being in the Cubs and the Boy Scouts, we often went on these retreats in the summertime, and often that involved some shooting range, shooting at targets. I think also with the school I went to, a few times we went to visit the local gun range. So I was actually shotgun from a fairly young age up until my teens. It is a very strange feeling. You do really feel the power of the gun. Like the recoil thing is real. I've mainly shot rifles, so you do get a fair kick in the there's a fair kick back to your shoulder, and yeah, you do really get the sense of the power of the gun, and I'm quite horrified by actually how easy it is to aim and shoot a gun. If you kind of have given the basic guidance of how easy it is to shoot quite a high powerful weapon, and I'm definitely not a gun aficionado. I'm horrified at the access to guns the Americans have, and how you see that play out. When I was, I don't know how old I was, but I think maybe it was probably 11 or 12 maybe when Dunblane happened, and that was absolutely horrifying. But at least the response of the British government at the time to ban handguns was, I think, the correct response. And I think something like the UK has only had something like 6 mass shootings or something in the whole civilian mass shootings. I think we have to clarify in the history of the UK, which I think is a bit more of a testament of us to respond with sensible legislation. And even here in Canada, where guns are pretty easy to get on, and ownership is pretty high, it's just not on the level of America, and nowhere is on the level of America. But it's relatively safe. I think there's been a few shootings that you've heard about recently. There actually was one not too far away. I think it was up in Renfrew. But they tend to be targeted. You don't so much hear of the kind of mass shootings, random shootings, or shootings of bystanders. Um, so there's that. You just don't really feel the you don't really feel the oppressive nature of it could happen right anytime. But I kind of get when I'm in America. Um, but yeah, I think the biggest issue with the prolific gun ownership in Canada though is actually is it kind of directly leads to this like a suicide rate. Like I think suicide by gun is actually one of the leading is one of the more common causes of suicide, and yeah, I think that's a big problem too. But yeah, it's certainly is quite the experience to shoot a gun. But I don't think it's something that people should be able to have the ease to get access to. Anyway, number 9. It ain't the bullet that gets you; it's the fall. How would you ideally like to cash in your chips? I think just definitely the most least painful way possible. I think we all probably have fantasized at some point that you kind of want an honorable death, so maybe like saving someone or going down in a vein of glory, kind of in fighting a righteous war or something. I think if I was around in the 1930s, I would have been one of the people who um, went to war with Franco when the call was made. Um, not sure if I would have necessarily conscripted to be in a national army of it, but I think definitely being in an army, a people's army fighting fascism, this sounds a little bit more honorable. I I probably think that if I was in some uh, fascist country, I would form part of uh, left wing militia. I would probably be in one of those to fight fascism. Definitely, if I was in Eastern Europe in the time of Hitler, I'd be in a partisan group. But yeah, other than that, I think just as probably as least painful and quietly and I don't know if I want to see it coming or if I want to be given um, time to say goodbye to everybody. I don't know what the better one of the two is. But I definitely am too squeamish to want to die in any kind of painful, crazy way. And lastly, it's tag some owl hoots. Um, so I am going to tag Daniel at Guilty Feet. I'm particularly interested at his travels in America. Jacket Rambling Raconteur. I think it'd be interesting to hear someone who actually lives in the West, what they feel about it. Bill Rittenberg, who's in the Midwest. I think Bill likes the old Westerner too, and obviously he's kind of right in the heart of a lot of the action, being in the Midwest. And then Peg at the History Shelf. I know Peg is a huge fan of Lee Lamore, so I'd also like to know about Peg's history of being in America, living in the West, because I think she's originally from Michigan, or she moved around. She's from the army family, so I think Michigan, and now lives in Colorado. So I'd be interested to hear some stories from that, and definitely would like to know if she's seen some bison. And yeah, so I think that's it. I will leave it at that. And it's been good doing this and talking to you all again. And if any of you want to, any viewers want to answer all or any of the questions, just feel free to go ahead in the comment. I'd love to hear from you too. So, yep, have a good one. Bye.